is Untitled Chapter. I'm from Toronto Urban Growers, and I'm thrilled that you're all able to come today. Of course, as an urban grower, the first expression of gratitude and acknowledgement that I think we need to give is to the land and to the people who cared for it for thousands of years. We often recognize the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, Seneca, and Mississaugas of the Credit Nations, but many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island have lived on and cared for these lands and continue to do so. So I'd like to express gratitude for the opportunity to work on this land and live on this land, but also for the knowledge that Indigenous peoples have really generously shared with us. I think we all owe deep gratitude to the land defenders who fight to preserve the well-being of the earth for all of us. And most recent ones, the 1492 land back lane, just in our neighboring area, just by 6 nations. So thanks to everyone for coming. I've got a few thank yous here. I wanted to say thank you to our speakers, Dr. Eva Jewell and Donna Powless and Rick Hill. I also wanted to thank my co-collaborators, Lorraine Johnson, Angela Elzinga Chang from Greenest City for planning this and for joining us all on the learning path, we call it. Joss Two Crows Tremblay also had a lot to offer to the planning, so thanks to them for ideas and connections. Emma Tamlin from the Toronto Youth Food Policy Council and Ryerson has helped us with our tech today, so you'll hear me calling for her desperately on occasion. Rebecca Garrett is our moderator for today, and I'll tell you a bit more about Rebecca in a few minutes. I'd also like to give a quick tip of the hat to our funders and supporters, so the Ryerson Centre for Studies in Food Securities, Trillium Foundation, City of Toronto, and Lush Cosmetics. We are recording this session so that we can share it with others who can't attend today. So we're going to add some resources into the chat box. If you have any questions for the speakers, you can add them in there. And also, just a reminder that the chat box will be saved. And this was news to me. Private chats also get saved. So if you're sending little notes to each other, just be aware that it will end up in the final record for us. So I want to tell you a little bit about why we decided to do this webinar. We started from the question, how do we as land-based workers collectively deepen our commitment to treaty responsibilities? The original idea was, let's have an annual gathering. And I think Eva was the first person to get me thinking about, well, how can we commit to treaties if we don't know anything about them or what our responsibilities are through those treaties? So we started thinking about, well, how do we help people with that learning? So today is one small, short step towards that learning. Many of you have already been on that path for a while, but it's also about starting to envision how we can continue to learn, and to collectively celebrate and express gratitude, but also to hold each other accountable. So while you're listening to the speakers we have, there's going to be some wonderful conversations. Think about what helps you develop your relationship to the earth and to the keepers of the earth. What would a collective endeavor look like? Everything from how often, what format, what kind of things do we have to do? You can share your thoughts and your concerns in the chat box, or my email is going to be up in the chat. I'd be really happy to hear your ideas at any time. So this would be when I ask, get back to Zoom here. Do we have Donna on the line now? Have we managed to get Donna on? Donna says she's still trying to get in. Okay, Emma, do we have, are you working with Donna on this one?
Yeah, I'm just on the phone with Donna right now, working with her to get her logged in.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, while we're waiting for Donna, she's going to give us a Thanksgiving address, which is a traditional way of starting off meetings that is meant to bring us all together with one mind, with one good mind. So we would like to start with that, but I think what we'll do while we're waiting is maybe we will ask Rebecca if you would introduce our speakers so we have a sense of who they are. But first, I want to tell everyone who you are, Rebecca. That's okay? So Rebecca Garrett is a visual video community-based artist based in Toronto and southwestern Ontario. Her ancestors were Irish, Scottish, English settlers. In one way or another, all of her works can be seen as investigations of the effects of structures of containment or control, such as architecture, colonialism, or global media, on perception, psychic and cultural survival, and knowledge production. Rebecca's work includes a close collaboration with the Decho First Nations in the Northwest Territories to produce a documentary of their history and the struggle for control over the land in over 50 years of land claim negotiations. The English title is Fighting for Our Land. So with that, Rebecca, do you want to tell us a few words about who we have speaking today?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Let's see. So we are really fortunate. Actually, I'll just say a couple of words first, just about that these are very strange times in a way, and so we can't follow usual protocol. We can't have tobacco. We can't meet together to have food, but we're hoping to offer those exchanges in the future. At the same time, it's like a turning point where things are clear and change is necessary. So we're so fortunate and honored to have today to speak to us Rick Hill and Dr. Eva Jewell and Donna Powless. So I can tell you more about them now, or I can just introduce them before they speak. It's maybe if it depends on if Donna is here, or we're waiting for Donna still.
I think we're still waiting for Donna to get hooked up. So why don't you go ahead with the introductions? And while you're doing that, I'm going to put some links in the chat box, links to all of the work that our speakers are doing, and a few other links that may be useful for everyone.
Okay, so Rick Hill is a citizen of the Beaver clan of the Tuscarora Nation of the Haudenosaunee at Grand River, and is Indigenous Innovation Specialist at Mohawk College. He holds a master's degree in American Studies from the State University of New York at Buffalo. He is the former Assistant Director for Public Programs at the National Museum of the American Indian Smithsonian Institution, Museum Director at Institute of American Indian Arts, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Assistant Professor, Native American Studies at SUNY Buffalo. He recently retired as Senior Project Coordinator of the Yellowhead Indigenous Knowledge Center at Six Nations Polytechnic, Oswego, Ontario. Rick is currently working as an interpretive specialist to develop exhibitions for the recently renovated Mohawk Institute, the oldest Indian residential school in Canada. Dr. Eva Jewell, Mayangan Dodem, and she, her, or hers, is Anishinaabekwe with Haudenosaunee lineages from Deshkan, Ziibiing, or Chippewas of the Thames First Nation in southwestern Ontario. Dr. Jewell is Assistant Professor of Sociology at Ryerson University and Associate Fellow at the Yellowhead Institute. Dr. Jewell holds a BA from the Institute of American Indian Arts, an MA from University of Victoria, and a Doctor of Social Sciences from Royal Roads University. Her scholarship supports community-based mixed methods inquiry on topics of culture, governance, and language resurgence in her First Nation, with emergent work on the role of women in Anishinaabe governance structures. Dr. Jewell joined Ryerson University following her postdoctoral fellowship in Indigenous methodologies at Brock University's Social Justice Research Institute, where she worked with Niagara region's urban Indigenous community on perspectives of gender, work, and care. And thirdly, Donna Powless is of the Snipe clan, the Cayuga of the Six Nations, and is director of the Taiaiako'n Historical Preservation Society. The society oversees burial sites and sacred sites in High Park in Toronto. Her work focuses on the connection between treaty rights and actual work on the ground. Okay. So that's our speakers. Any?
Okay, shall we check in with Emma again? Do we have Donna? Donna is, by the way, is calling in by phone from Six Nations, so her way of accessing this is going to be a little different.
I think she was just able to join, but we'll check in with her.
Good.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Donna. I'm here.
Yay! Great.
I just was talking about, I just introduced you, so now I'll give it back to Rhonda.
Yes, Donna, I just mentioned that you would be interested in doing a Thanksgiving address for us, and we would be really honored if you would get us started with that.
Okay. Scano, Seguego, Canigiosta, Piasso, Hi, Seguay, and Diso, Yahweh, Whitney Shrio, Yahweh, O Wednesday, Yahweh, Yahweh, O Deka, Yahweh, O Niganos, Yahweh, O Wa, Yahweh, O Wata, Yahweh, Jizunduk, Yahweh, Dewaho Days, Yahweh, Awe, He, Gowa, Yahweh, Ongwe, Hongwe, Sagwe, Gong, Yahweh. Hello.
Hi, Donna. Did you want to give a quick explanation of what that was you were just saying?
Okay. I was just greeting everyone, and I said my name was Kinigiosta Giaso, and makes water clear. And I addressed Squindiso, the creator, and giving thanks for a nice day, and giving thanks for the existing earth, and giving thanks for the fire, thanks for the water, and giving thanks for the air and wind, and giving thanks for the maple trees, and giving thanks for the strawberries, and giving thanks for the deer, the animal world, and giving thanks for the eagle, and giving thanks for our original Indigenous people of this country, and giving thanks for everyone that's here today. Okay.
Wonderful, Yahweh, Donna. That was great. Thank you. And now maybe Rebecca, I will hand it back to you, and we can start with our questions.
Okay. We're starting with our speakers, is that right?
Yes.
So again, we're going to start with Rick Hill, whom I read an introduction for before. I don't know if you're ready, Rick, to speak at this point.
Yes, I'm ready.
Oh, perfect. So thank you very much for joining us, and I'll just let you take it away.
Well, Tkaronto, that's a Tuscarora greeting that talks about us being well. But we can't be well unless we're connected to the earth and connected to the people who are also connected to the earth. So our wellness is an important part of treaty making. You know, you can ask, what is a treaty? Well, I can tell you it's more than a parchment. It's even more than a wampum belt. A treaty is a relationship between two nations. It's an ongoing relationship. It depends on the nature of that relationship. Your people are either going to do well because the treaty is upholding these principles that they agreed to, or you're going to suffer because your treaty partner has failed to live up to their obligations. Now, the Haudenosaunee of the Six Nations made treaties with the Dutch, the French, the English, the Americans. We don't have a particular treaty where Canada signed off on it because we have what they call pre-Confederation treaties prior to the birth of Canada. They were made with Great Britain on behalf of what was called Canada. But it's kind of a dilemma right now because our treaty partner, particularly Great Britain, kind of refuses to recognize the validity of the treaties that were made between our ancestors. If you look at these treaty documents, you have to kind of be like a detective. Even though there's words there that would imply certain things, that doesn't mean that that's what was agreed to. We have our wampum belts that are our way of telling the story. But our wampum belts also don't tell the whole story. You need to look at the wampum belt, look at what the treaty document says, and you got to look at the treaty minutes, all of the discussion around the treaties. In that, you're going to understand the nature of this relationship. So let me focus a bit on relationship with Great Britain. First, we had a treaty with the Dutch. I think everybody should know that by now, called the Two-Row Wampum Treaty, where the ship and the canoe are going to go side by side down the river of life together. Their vessels are going to be linked. When the British defeated the Dutch, they took over that relationship. So then it was the Haudenosaunee and the English ship. And the English changed that rope that tied our vessels together to a silver chain called the Silver Covenant chain. And they made a treaty with us in, I think it was 1667. They picked up on the principles of sovereignty and of the two-row, but they added this idea of this covenant chain, that we're going to be related to one another, we're going to help one another. So the treaties are about the nature of that relationship. It can provide economic aid, military aid. It can deal with a variety of matters, most notably about land. Some people would say treaties are all about taking land or taking jurisdiction over that land. And that's kind of true. It all depends. I've had many different treaties. So even though we made a treaty relationship with Great Britain, there were probably a couple of hundred occasions where we kept meeting with them, as we would say, polish the chain, renew our agreements, to take care of the things that were falling apart, ask for their assistance. But in about 1830 to 1840, Great Britain began to change its mind about its treaty partners. Prior to that, they looked at our people as nations. They needed our military alliance. They needed our warriors to defend their interests against France and against the Americans. But in the mid-19th century, they began to have what's called the Indian question. What are we going to do with these Indians? And Great Britain came up with 4 options. Think of these carefully. The first option was to exterminate us, like they tried to do in the United States. But the English didn't have stomach for that anymore. The second option was to enslave us. But slavery was kind of on the way of going out in Great Britain at the time. That wasn't a viable option. The third option was to isolate us, put us on tiny reserves, far away from the mainstream, kind of out of the way, out of sight, out of mind. The fourth option was to amalgamate us. It means to assimilate us into their system. They chose the last two. And the numbered treaties that Canada made as they expanded west were all about taking more and more land and isolating the native communities into these small postage stamps. At the same time, they started the residential school program to try to alter the thinking of the people. And what they thought was, if we can kind of beat the native out of them, pacify them through Christianity and the civil ways of the English, they won't fight us over land taking. That was really their thinking. So treaty making kind of came to an end, at least with the Haudenosaunee. We haven't made a treaty or had a treaty agreement with Great Britain since the close of the War of 1812. We haven't had an occasion to polish the chain with the British officials or even the Canadian officials. So it raises the question, do we still have a treaty? Maybe our governments will never agree as to what the treaty is or what the treaty could be. But the reason why I'm here today is I believe that we can have a people-to-people treaty that actually puts to work the principles because of our common interest in the earth and in our health and our well-being and our families and our future. And maybe we can take the principles of treaty making. So here's some of them, and I'll share with you. When we made this covenant chain relationship with Great Britain, they said there were 3 principles that would be applying to this relationship. The first one is that we have to have mutual respect. We will respect each other's right to exist, respect each other's right to govern themselves, and respect the fact that we are neighbors. The second principle was that we will then learn how to trust one another. And by trust means that we'll keep our word, that we'll be dependable to one another, and that we're not going to do things to deceive one another. The third one is that if we do those things, if we have respect and trust, we will then have an ongoing friendship. That means that we will live in peace. So that's like great grandmotherly advice, right? Those are things we should all do. But when it comes to government, it's very hard to find evidence where the Canadian government respects the Indigenous people in the way that Great Britain intended. And because of the actions of the government, and because of the Indian Act, and because of the ignoring of our treaties, it's pretty hard to trust them. Every time now a government official comes to us and says, well, just trust me on this matter, we just kind of laugh, you know. It's just, it's very hard to. So politically, I don't believe we can reestablish a treaty relationship with Canada or with Great Britain. It's premised on those. But I believe we can use those principles to establish relationships with people, both from the ship and the canoe, because our future hangs in the balance. So it does us no good to argue over who has a treaty right to catch a polluted fish. If the fish are polluted and if the waters are being harmed by both the canoe and the ship, we have to do something to resolve that matter. And treaties can be good, and treaties can get in the way. Look at all of the hoopla over renegotiating the NAFTA treaty between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. It's big business. It's a big matter. In the old days, the treaty would be negotiated in the field around a council fire, either near Albany or York or Niagara on the Lake. And then those parties would take that agreement back to their nations for confirmation. So even though you can find a piece of paper with words on it, and even though there's signatures of some people, that doesn't mean that that agreement was ever ratified by the Indigenous government, or for that matter, even ratified by the British government. So treaties are kind of a double-edged sword, because when you read what's written, oftentimes I shake my head thinking like, how could my ancestors ever agree to that stuff? Giving away millions of acres of land, giving away title to the land, giving away jurisdiction on the land. They may have retained the right to hunt in some of these treaties, but think about that. If it's true that the earth is our mother, how could we in our right mind even give up 1 inch of our mother? You know, when Tecumseh was on the rise, he was quite adamant. He said that any chief who signs a treaty should be assassinated because all of these treaties are a receipt for land theft. And he lost a lot of respect for his leaders because they kept giving away more and more and more. There was a Seneca leader, his name was Red Jacket, who gave a good illustration of what that meant. He says, you know, when the Europeans first arrived, They asked for a seat. We had this long tree that we were sitting on. And we said, yes, come and sit down here with us. And pretty soon their cousin showed up, asked for a seat, and their distant relative showed up and kept asking for a seat, and being generous, we kept giving them more and more space. But then by the time the 19th century rolls around, Red Jacket said, now look at, he says, we only have one seat left on this bench, and you're trying to push us off of that. So Red Jacket was very adamant that we can't trust our treaty partners. We should stop pretending, should stop making these treaties that keep taking more and more land. Well, we have to understand too, our ancestors were under great stress. The colonization was like a big tidal wave. It just overwhelmed many of our people. Some of our leaders, in face of that, thought, well, you know, if we get a wheelbarrow full of cash, we'll go move off to this little reserve, we'll be okay. But usually the cash is gone. Somebody stole a wheelbarrow, and that little land you thought was going to be your safe haven keeps getting whittled away. Without land, I guess the question we raise is, who are we? Can we be ourselves if we don't have that land? And I'm not talking about owning land, the title to land, or the right to sell land. I'm talking about this primary relationship with this thing we call our mother, because she gives life to us. We plant, we cultivate, we raise our children there, and she sustains our life. You could say that's the original treaty, that humans are going to respect the earth. We're going to trust that she's going to do what she's going to do. She's going to trust that we're going to do the things like planting and cultivating and harvesting respectfully. And that we're going to have this ongoing relationship. And that we're going to be able to live in peace if we do that. But when somebody comes and starts pulling the rug out and starts taking more and more land, starts polluting the water, starts killing all the sustenance, and now trying to genetically modify those heirloom seeds that we have, I don't know if you want a treaty relationship with those kind of people. So I spent my whole adult life trying to figure out what are our treaties for the Haudenosaunee, because we also have a covenant chain with the United States. We're very divided people as a result, living on both sides of the treaty border. And I keep thinking, why is it that we have this great feeling in the sanctity, the sacredness of these treaties, when seldom have the terms of the treaty ever been fulfilled? So in many ways, the Indigenous people are some of the most hopeful people you're ever going to meet, because they believe these should continue, that these things do matter. But the older I get, the more I keep saying, well, if our treaty partner has failed to live up to the terms of the treaty, maybe the treaty's no longer the device by which we were going to ensure our survival. And maybe we really need to renegotiate our relationship with the people of the ship in such a way that individuals can bring their minds together. We can agree that we're not going to harm one another. We can agree that we're going to find ways to restore our relationship to the earth. And bringing all of those skills to bear, maybe we can accomplish what our governments were never able to do. So those are some of the ideas I thought that I'd share with you today. I'm sure we're going to have more discussion, and I look forward to some questions, and we can continue that discussion. So thank you very much for that.
Trying to get my video back. Thank you very much, Eva. It's so timely, and so the truths that you're speaking are really provocative. So I'm really looking forward to our discussion. And I'll just go over the questions that initiated this conversation, which were, what concerns do you have about how treaties are playing out now? And what does it mean to be a treaty person from a land-based perspective? And I guess indeed from any perspective. So next, I'd like to go on to hear from Dr. Eva Jewell. And although I introduced Dr. Jewell before, I think I'll just give a shortened version of that introduction in case people have just joined us recently. Dr. Eva Jewell is a Mangan Dodem and is Anishinaabekwe with Haudenosaunee lineage from Deshkan, Ziibiing, which is Chippewas of the Thames First Nation. She holds a BA from the Institute of American Indian Arts, an MA from University of Victoria, and Doctor of Social Sciences from Royal Roads University. Her scholarship supports community-based mixed methods inquiry on topics of culture, governance, and language resurgence in her First Nation, with emergent work on the role of women in Anishinaabe governance structures. She is with the Ryerson University and she also works with the Yellowhead Institute. She's an associate fellow at the Yellowhead Institute. So I am really pleased to introduce you to Dr. Eva Jewell. Do you want to go ahead?
Miigwech, Rebecca. Miigwech to everyone for joining us today and for this conversation, to the Toronto Urban Growers for assembling this group, and miigwech to Donna for your beautiful opening words, and to Rick as well. Thank you. That brought a bit of a tear to my eye reflecting on your words. Bonjour Nindawe Magnadok Wawie Deshkan Indigenous Deshkan Ziibiing Donjaba, a Maingan Dodem, Anishinaabekwe Dao, Jagonashi Noswin Eva Jewell. And my English name is Eva Jewell, but my Anishinaabe, my spirit name is Circle Woman. And I am from the Wolf Clan, and I received my Wolf Clan actually from my Haudenosaunee lineage that was mentioned in my bio. And I should say that I sometimes think of, when we think about the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, about that relationship between the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee. Sometimes I reflect on how I'm able to be here because of that treaty between our nations. But my mom and down my maternal line are Anishinaabeg people from Southern Ontario, or what's currently Southern Ontario, and into the Aurelia region where Chippewas of Rama and lineage from further in that area. And then on my father's side, I am Oneida and Mohawk from Oneida the Thames, and Mohawk from Six Nations. From my great grandmother was Gussie Green from Six Nations. And so I have both of these lineages, and if you know anything about the relationship between the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee, is that we had agreements between our nations that recognized our worldviews, or each other's worldviews, and recognized and respected each other's sovereignty, and through terms of what's called principles of non-interference. And so this treaty relationship that we had developed after many years of fighting and warring with one another, and we had decided to bury the hatchet and to make peace with this treaty. And so this makes a space where we share that mutual recognition and respect each other, respect each other's nationhood and relationship with land. And so that treaty articulates our shared environmental ethics. Actually, there wasn't really a lot to, in my mind, I'm thinking in relation to when Europeans were making treaties with us, there wasn't a lot of concepts to translate when we were talking and creating treaties with each other as Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee. We both had relationship-based societies that were deeply revered the land that we had come from, and so we already had that same shared sentiment and understanding of life. And so it's that common regard that we have for consent with the land that is so central to our diplomatic processes. And I think about that treaty as being so beautiful, and all the treaties that we had made with between Indigenous nations, because they have this shared principle of temporal consent, and I call it temporal consent, meaning that it's consent in one space and time. It's consent that extends beyond one space and time. It's consent that extends beyond into the future of those generations that we have yet to even know or to see. And so this seventh generation principle that we share as Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee, and maybe we had developed that or co-created that because many different Indigenous nations have a principle like that, where we consider the impacts of our actions now and into the future generations. And I think that was probably one of the defining factors of entering into a treaty together, because we knew that violence was not sustainable. And I think that this treaty, the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, it has this inherent adoration and reverence for the interdependence that humans have with the land and with our relatives that are embodied by other beings. So we recognize that treaties, treaty principles, treaty practices can actually extend beyond human beings, that we can have treaties with the beings that are outside of a human form. And so in this agreement, we really take seriously our responsibility of being a good relative. And it's really such a beautiful law that reflects our complex technical understanding and our intellectual engagement with our universe. And I think that it's a very advanced human relationship with the world. And I had a bit of an issue recently because I just joined Ryerson in the last, I joined Ryerson in 2019. And I had taken notice that there was this practice of stating the land acknowledgement and saying that settlers had been welcomed into the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. And I thought to myself, when did that ever happen? Because that's a very old relationship between Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe. And so if I can ask a question to my fellow panels after I say a few more things, but I just wanted to put that out there as a question, what my fellow panelists thought about that particular statement. But in reflecting on it, I asked Dr. Alan Corbière, who's an Anishinaabe treaty historian, and who's just, I like to refer to him as a national treasure because he's just like so, to Anishinaabe people, he just really has so much knowledge and is so kind in sharing with all of this knowledge. And so I asked him one time, I said, hey, were settlers ever welcomed into the Dish with One Spoon Treaty? Because they're saying it a lot here. And he says, no, I can't think of any time that they were actually welcomed into that treaty. The last time the treaty was recited was in 1840 by Chief Yellowhead. And so, and that last time, Chief Yellowhead was actually an ancestor of mine down my maternal line in Rama, what's now Rama First Nation. And he had said that the council fires representing peaceful relations between Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee shall burn for as long as the world stood. And so this was our treaty practice that we share, it's a sacred relationship between the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee that hopefully I think we continue to uphold and try to reclaim and to resurge that practice amongst our nations. And there was one example back in 2012. So I'm from Chippewas of the Thames First Nation. My dad's from Oneida. Oneida is across the river from Chippewas, so I'm from both sides of the river. And there was a time when we had ceremonies on the Chippewa side, and the longhouse on the Oneida side was welcomed, and they came over in a delegation, and we held I don't know that it was a polishing of the chain, so to speak, or if it was a recital of the treaty, but it was in memory and in commemoration of that relationship that we have with one another and our close living relationships that we still continue to have in people like me who are of both nations. And so I think about that, and I don't know, I can't recall at any time in my own study, in my own work, and looking for this time when there were Europeans that were welcomed into that treaty. And in so doing, I kind of got around all the work and the research by just asking Alan Corbière, who's a very well-known treaty historian, about that. And another thing he had said was, there was a time when the Dish with One Spoon was stated by Sir William Johnson to have been brought into the fort at, I can't remember if it was Fort Detroit or Amherstburg. But Sir William Johnson had said, we will bring the dish into the fort. And what that meant was, we will provide food for you. So there's diplomatic language that is really complex that has to be considered as well. So what I'm saying is, when you're thinking as somebody who's non-Indigenous, or you're a newcomer to this territory, and you're thinking about how you uphold your treaty responsibilities, I think it's important to think about which treaty responsibilities are yours to uphold, and to know where the boundaries of that are. And so when I was doing a little bit of research beforehand, before this particular webinar, I was looking for the particular treaties that one would uphold, or the treaty relationship. And the one I was thinking about was 1764 Treaty of Niagara. And I could be wrong, but I think about that particular treaty because it is the treaty, or one of the first times where Anishinaabe in particular, this is an Anishinaabe oriented perspective, are promising things together with the Shaganashaku, the English people, or the the English people, I should say. And Alan Corbier says that Giwich Kendewok, or they took each other by the hand, and they made Wawindam Madoan, which is to promise things together. There was a mutual promise between the two. And so there are plenty of responsibilities on the part of Canadians that they should uphold, and to be clear about which ones that you are upholding would be really helpful for us, because it's not, some things are not really yours to reclaim, and that is the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. And so saying that, I just wanted to mention, I had asked Alan about this. I said, hey, when I had asked him about this treaty, I said, these Canadians really, really want to be a part of a treaty, right? Because they want to point to an area of where is their treaty responsibility? When is the time that they can point to that things were good between Indigenous peoples and newcomers or non-Indigenous peoples? When did that actually take place? Because I think a lot of Canadians are really aspiring to take something, for example, as some kind of relationship in time, as an example for how they can proceed into the future, living in a just way in these territories that are not their own, or that were actually stolen from us. And he said, I said, they're always trying to talk about the Dish with One Spoon, that they want to be a part of that. But they have so many other treaties that they should be upholding. Well, the numbered treaties, of course, and in terms of the pre-Confederate ones, there's 1764. And he said, I know they have major FOMO, major fear of missing out. And so I thought that was kind of funny that, so I want to reiterate that it's important that we think about when you are thinking about a just relationship with the land and with Indigenous peoples, that you think and reflect on which ones that your ancestors actually made, and maybe not the ones that are kind of like in vogue right now. And so another thing I wanted to mention about treaties is the role of women and femmes in treaties. And so just lastly, that treaty diplomatic language refers to women and femmes' role in political life as being, in this term, as long as the rivers flow. And that refers to the waters that break when women give birth, as Sharon Venn talks about quite a bit. And so because women are the doorways to this world, their role in treaty and political life is crucial. So I just wanted to mention this, that it's one area of treaty discussions that isn't often talked about, that in settler colonialism, under the patriarchy, under cis heteropatriarchy, and the contemporary work of governance as we see it playing out today, often has to do with land claims or political work or economic development or infrastructure, all these types of these realms of our current Indian Act system that position Indigenous peoples in this very gendered way, where the feminized work of our care and advocacy against sexualized and gendered violence is often regarded as the stuff that's less important. But we are, as Anishinaabekwe, or like as Indigenous women, we're positioned as carers of the waters and of the children who will ultimately populate and take up the roles and responsibilities that are outlined in treaties. And in our Adsokunan, or our Anishinaabe canon, that water holds memory. And so because we as women hold water, and when we carry life within us, we also hold the memories of our nationhood. And so it's a testament to our Anishinaabekwe and our role as intellectuals, as Anishinaabe women, as intellectuals in our intergenerational governance. When we raise our children to embody the principles of our governance systems, such as all those things that are contained within treaties that are so important, such as consent or autonomy or negotiation, those complex social skills that are required to actually embody those treaty relationships are often passed on and cared for by women. And so when I think about the concerns that I have about treaties that are playing out right now, so one of the questions was, what concerns do you have about how treaties are playing out now? I'm not sure that I have any particular concern, just that they're actually not playing out at all. We don't live in a treaty relationship, as Rick had mentioned. We don't live in any way that is in accordance with the aspirations that our ancestors once had. And that to me is indicative of the fact that our treaty partner did not uphold their side of the treaty, and in fact violated it pretty profoundly. It was a profound violation of not only the treaty relationship, but of life in general. Capitalism and the system of settler colonialism right now is the antithesis to our treaties. So we actually live in direct violation of all of our treaties today. So I don't know how to, I really do like Rick's approach to thinking about how we as people can come together, because obviously we take issue with these particular systems if we're here today and trying to think about what can we do to actually fix our relationship with one another, because we all do need to live. We need to be in relationship with the land, and we need to be ensuring that our land is taken care of in order to live in a good way. And so what I say to that is to think about these treaties and to really take seriously the Anishinaabe, or the Indigenous, the Haudenosaunee perspective of them, and to learn what is meant by living a good life in terms of living a good life with the land, and how that could change your lifestyle, right? So thinking about how to live in a way that is in relationship with our treaty principles. So it's important to understand that diplomatic language of treaties that we made with the English, with what became Canada, and honoring the side of the Indigenous peoples who made these treaties, because that is the side that is often erased. And I suppose it starts by learning the history of the territory on which you reside. So that's all I'll say for now.
Miigwech, thank you, Newa. That was, again, incredibly powerful. Thank you. Very amazing points for us to think about and work with, and hopefully there'll be time to discuss later. I think I see Donna. And
yes, I'm here.
There you are, Donna. I'm just going to give you your introduction quickly again, Donna, for people who've come in since the beginning. Donna Powless is of the Snipe Clan, Cayuga of the Six Nations, and is director of the Taiaiako'n Historical Preservation Society. The society oversees burial sites and sacred sites in High Park. Her work focuses on the connection between treaty rights and actual work on the ground. Yeah, you want to go ahead, Donna?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say to welcome everyone here today who's all listening and who's all visual. And I'm just at home here, but I've been listening, and to Rick and Eva. And I guess one of the things that the questions that were given to me prior to how can we understand about treaties and how can we be a part of it? What I would say is by acknowledging and utilizing our treaty rights and how the treaties come to life today is that we've been breathing life into our treaties under the Nan Fran Treaty 1701, and how we can live up to the treaties. And we've been in partnership with people in the High Park. We attend meetings with the Advisory Council Resource in High Park, and we also Taiaiako'n has worked with the Nature Center in High Park, and we do have Indigenous program there that we've done in the past year, and because of what's happening now, it's been kind of on hold, but we're planning on one for the June. The Indigenous Day will be coming up. And but we do have ongoing relationship with the Nature Center at the new and the old, and we have a garden. We did a sunflower circle garden there this past summer, and we also have another garden at the old Nature Center, and we've done some things at the old Nature Center. And we also were offered a spot at Coburn Lodge, and it was kind of short notice. But we're making plans for the new growing season in the spring, and just a matter of getting some of our committee people together to work on these gardens and these spaces that we acquired in High Park. So we are. For myself, I've done treaty research mostly all my life, and I hold those treaties close to my heart. And I also done research with great law of peace and our Constitution and our governance, our way of life, and our day-to-day living. And with our chiefs and clan mothers, and working with our people. And I've taken the volunteer position as director for Tkaronto in the Toronto area, the High Park, and under the Nan Fran Treaty. I advocate for the Nan Fran Treaty and developing our relationship with our treaty partners, and we've come a long way, and there's hope, and that we have a lot of people that are interested and want to learn more and how they can be more involved. And so we've in our Indigenous program, when we run our events, we are inclusive with the other people in our treaty rights. We have the people that we made agreements with, their ancestors, if you want to call them settlers or Canadian citizens and American citizens, with these people that have come from other countries that are now living in our country. And we're basically, I think for a long time, our treaty rights have gone unnoticed and basically ignored. So it was our responsibility under the Nan Fran Treaty. Our main negotiators for the Nan Fran Treaty was the Cayuga Nation and Onondaga Nation. And I worked with Chief Attorney General in the past, and he was very instrumental in helping our organization come together. And we realized that we had to have structure as to what we were wanting to do with the burial sites and sacred sites in High Park and also in the GTA surrounding areas, because we had so many villages and longhouses in Toronto, and that we had lived there. Our ancestors had lived around the Great Lakes for a long time, and Toronto was our trading place where a lot of our people came through in different nations, came to trade, and during the fur trade, and we traded maybe corn, and the people that had the rice we traded. We also trade tobacco, medicines, all kinds of things. So it was very, we see in Toronto as a very, what would you call that? A unicorn? Horn of plenty. It was very plentiful in Toronto, around that area, and that's one of the reasons why we had so many villages there, and why we had a very good marketplace because of the waterways and how people were able to travel along the Humber and the Rouge, and everything was so accessible and plentiful for our people, and to sustain our livelihood. And from there, we have other people that have, like our Six Nations people, that travel from the States and from either Oklahoma or Kili Lake or Mohawk Valley, Ohio, and come up along, across the ditch. We call the border the ditch. Anyways, so we're in this part of the world, which is North America, and this is, we see our homelands is North America, and so we have a big area, and so the Nanfran runs all the way up to Quebec and out so far, and it's a big area, come down into Toronto, down into the States, down into Mohawk Valley. So that Nanfran Treaty covers a lot of territory. And then we have the Haldimand Deed at the Grand River from the mouth to the source, and 6 miles is actually, it's more miles than just 6 miles. It runs out to Nanticoke, right up to Mud Street in Hamilton, and then it kind of hooks into the Nanfran Treaty, so we have a wide territory. And like our territory has always been our home, and that we've always had freedom to travel wherever we need to go. And there really wasn't any boundaries that we were supposed to be put in this one little place where they call reservation. And it was just a place to hang your hat right now. But that whole place outside in our territory is where we hunted, fished, and trapped. And my father was a hunter, fisher, and trapper, so he traveled a lot around in our territory and other territories. So we had that freedom to do that. And when they came about with the Nanfran Treaty, there were so many other nations that were part of the Iroquois Six Nations Confederacy. The Cayuga Nation has other nations that we've always spent time with, and that were a part of us when we came. We had a confederacy of our own way back when, and we had other nations of people that lived with us and basically was part of our community. We had Delawares and Saponis, and we had some other Ojibways and Tobacco, Neutral, but there were so many nations, and as far as I know, that there's 50 nations under that Nanfran Treaty, that we made an agreement that we would share the land and the resources with the people that come. And so And then with this one dish and one spoon, we have, there's no knife. And it's just the bowl and the spoon, and that we would share our food and whatever that would be in the bowl, that we would all eat from the same bowl and share. And there was always plenty for everyone. So when we shared, we do have one, when we do our ceremonies, we have one big pot. I don't know if you want to refer to that as a big, like a spoon, one dish and one spoon, but it's a big pot, and we make soup or mush or whatever, and we have a spoon, and everybody has their own bowl or finger food. Not everybody really uses spoons or utensils when we're in ceremony. So everybody might eat their soup there, or they might take it home. But we share. We do a lot of sharing, and we have like 4 or 5 longhouses going down down here at Six Nations. Right now, I think the Mohawk Longhouse is shut down, but the rest of our other nations' longhouses are still going, and we've continued to do our ceremonies, even though that there's a virus out there. We have one more ceremony to do for our ancestors this weekend, Friday and Saturday. Then we'll be done for the year, and then we take a break for December and January. Come February, we start our midwinter ceremonies, and that is our life cycle, and that we renew. And whenever things that are in the peak, that come into the peak, and what I mean by, like, we're harvesting constantly throughout the year. And whatever we have out there would be the maple trees, the sap, and the syrup. And then we're thankful for the thunders to come back, bring the water and the lightning, and to make sure that everyone's safe. And then we have a ceremony for our medicine mass, and they're the ones that take care of the medicine and the sickness and disease that might be out there, and they're the ones that keep the sickness and disease away. So it's like, and then we have our sun and moon ceremony. We also have a planting, blessing the seeds, and then we have a closing for when we're done planting, and we also have we're going into giving thanks for the strawberries. We have a ceremony for when they come into peak, and we give thanks, and we harvest the strawberries. That's our medicine, and then we go into our little green corn, our bean dance, and big green corn, and then we have our harvest dance, and then we have our medicine mass. Again, we have those twice a year, spring and fall, and we also have our ancestors, spring and fall, we do ceremony for. So that is our whole life cycle, and we constantly renew it. And so we're constantly harvesting throughout the year when everything comes into peak, and we give thanks for all of those things that I talked about in my Thanksgiving. And and with the earth, like the way she is existing now, and there's another word, Owenzage, is what's on the earth, and what was the things that were put on the earth, like our medicine plants and our trees, our animals, and the people. And we, the people, how we go about harvesting and work in the gardens, and we've established space to have some space to have a garden in different places in the GTA. And so we're building that relationship with our treaty people, partners, and how they understand, I guess, more of awareness and a consciousness in the last 2 years with our Indigenous program at the Nature Center that we were able to utilize and have our event and do it in a ceremonial way where we have like the 4 races of people, the human people. They're inclusive and they're a part of our event, and they're invited into the circle. They're also invited to participate and partake. We do have, it's a very elaborate event where we do arts and crafts, and we have the sacred fire, and we do drumming and dancing, and we also have a dinner, and we share food, and we also share medicine. And the last 2 events that we had at the Nature Center, and we also made sure that we go out and take some of the medicines to have a medicine tea drink. And we had maple syrup one time, and then we had another drink with cedar. Is that my signal that I'm done?
Hi.
Hello?
We're starting to see people fighting back who do not encourage
Hello?
this.
Hello?
Hi, Donna. Yes, that was great. Thank you so much. I got to unshare my screen, and then we will have Rebecca back.
Sure.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Donna and Newa. Thanks everyone. It's now almost 3:45, which means we have some time for conversation, and we actually wanted to give time to all of the speakers to ask each other questions or share responses to what each other have said. So I'm just going to leave that open to you now, although I just wanted to say first that I'm just so amazed at all of the, it's like the gifts that you've given us to think about and help point our way to the kind of work that we have to do. I just want to thank all of you for that so much. So for now, we can talk later maybe if there's time, but for now I'm going to open it to Eva and Rick and Donna if you want to have a conversation or ask anything of each other at this point.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, I had posed a question to Rick, and this is also for Donna as well. And that question was what you thought of when the statement is said that we welcome folks into the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. So what do you think about that as we are both, you know, Haudenosaunee? Well, I'm both Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe, but I'll be here as an Anishinaabekwe. When you think about our relationship together under the Dish with One Spoon.
Well, I was thinking about that as you were talking because, you know, if somebody shows up in your dining room, maybe uninvited into the house, you have a natural tendency to say, well, sit down, let's have something to eat, let's talk. So in many ways, the one premise of the dish was that everyone has an equal right to take from the dish what they need to satiate themselves and to be healthy. So if we apply that, everyone, of course, back then, you know, we didn't know there were other people of the world, but everyone. So I think we did invite them to say, come and take from the dish, but we understand that there's these rules that you only take what you need. You always leave something in the dish for other people, and then you keep the dish clean. So you could say our treaty relationship was trying to mentor what we call our younger brother, our treaty partner, into how to live here within this great dish. So there wasn't a formal occasion where we extended that to them, but I think the reality is that we needed them to live well within the dish where they wouldn't pollute it or wouldn't destroy all the animals or cut down all the trees. Maybe we didn't do such a good job in mentoring, but I think the intention was there. And whether we like it or not, there are more non-Indigenous people who are farming well in our lands, harvesting well, trying to recover their relationships. So maybe it's a time when we all rethink our relationship to the dish so that we can all enjoy that bounty. One last thing, at that Fort Niagara Treaty, where Sir William Johnson said that the Indigenous people will never go hungry or cold as long as the British wear red coats. He pledged that they will always provide us some food, the clothing, goods necessary. But that was developed this dependence. So if we take a kind of a Tecumseh strategy, no, we don't want all of that stuff. We want to live according to our own ways. We need to recover those ways so that we're not so dependent then on the grocery store, the pharmacy. So maybe that's just this time as to rethink our relationship with the dish and gather together as friends where we link arms around the dish to protect what's in the dish, but then to share its bounty. So there may be room to, if it hasn't happened, it needs to happen.
Rick. Donna, did you have thoughts about that?
Oh, yeah, because with the dish and one spoon, we always shared. We had a lot of things to be thankful for, and we did have communal living, and with our clan people and with our nation and with our longhouses where we lived way back when, and we always had where we would share. And when the people came, they needed, well, they were sick, and so we wanted to help them and share with them some of the things that we knew about medicine, and to feed them and teach them how to plant and grow different food and how to pick some medicine and care for themselves in a good way. So we did a lot of sharing, and as time went on, things kind of went for the turn, and we had more people coming and more people around in different places, and cutting down trees and maybe taking too much of the fish and not sharing, or a lot of things were going on and that shouldn't have been happening. And the way that we were used to living, we were pushed into other people's territory, and we had different areas where we would go hunting, fishing, and trapping. And so there was controversy or conflict when things got too crowded. And so we had to find a way to work with our relatives and build those a better relationship, and how we would go about our livelihood and sharing and living on the land, and the way of life that we were used to living, our traditional life, was living on the land and hunting, fishing, trapping, and growing a garden if we want to grow a garden. And but there was a lot of wild animal and wild food out there already that we didn't need to grow, like potatoes, chives, and onions. And there's lots of medicine out there that we can eat, make a tea, and heal ourselves with. So as time went on, there was a lot of controversy going on. So we had to make these agreements, these treaties, and we're hoping that as time went on, that our treaty rights that we were trying to utilize, and were going unheard sometimes. So we had to become more advocating of our treaty rights, and to let the people know that we are here and this is our territory, and that we need to be a part of whatever's going on, and to be able to communicate and have a good, healthy relationship with each other in order to, I guess, foresee what's happening in the world right now with all this pollution and disease, and how the water's polluted, and the air and the earth, and so we need to take a closer look and be more informed with our ecosystem, our environmental laws, the natural laws of how things should be, and that our natural laws are, and also how we can continue to care for the land and our mother the earth, and everything in creation for the future generations of our children. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you, Newa, Miigwech, Donna. So there are some questions from the chat, and some of them have already been addressed, but I just wanted to read one of them about, I guess, how a people's treaty could work. I know that it's been referred to, but I guess if anyone has, and it was specifically for Rick, but if others also have ideas about how a people's treaty, what that might look like.
Well, I think the idea would be we have to start building personal relationships, and together we can tackle these matters. Like, there's no answers right now, no magical answers. You can't just wave a feather and everything's going to be okay. But you got to build these relationships. That, as an example, we've been working on this project here of the legacy project from Earth to Table, of gathering like-minded people from a variety of cultures together. Take a look at, first of all, what do we share? What concerns do we have? But how can we kind of help each other do the things that we need to get done, particularly when it comes to agriculture and producing good food? So maybe that's the way that we just begin, not to, because there's an Earth treaty, there are people-to-people treaties, but I'm talking about is the relationship. And if you can develop finding ways to have healthy, productive relationships with Indigenous people who are willing to partner with you, that's where we get it started. So we can't convince all Canadians, we can't convince everybody in Ontario. But if we start kind of person to person, one-on-one, what do you provide? What does your group provide? But if we look at the intention to bring our good minds together to strengthen the people, now we have to admit that a lot of Indigenous people in Ontario are really suffering. They have poor housing, poor social conditions, a lot of matters going on, and it's kind of like picking one thing to partner with, finding the Indigenous host to say, yes, we would like you to come and help us with this particular matter. We build the little things together. So that's the kind of stuff that I was talking about on a people-to-people treaty relationship, is that we have this love for each other, this kindness, this caring, but we bring our skills to bear for mutual benefit. And I think that's the difference between how things could be now compared to the past. Everybody thought they knew better for us. Now we're saying if we have a partnership, we put our skills together in order to enhance the situation for all.
Okay, thank you again. Does anybody else want to speak to that, Eva or Donna?
I think that's a good idea. And that we always still have all the principles that are there and that we should utilize and have a working towards a better relationship and more healthier and better communities, and to help our people that are out there that are suffering with poor water conditions, housing, and people on the street. You know, it's just really a big issue right now because of this virus, what's going on right now, and how people are isolated and how they can still be a part of everything and to be safe and healthy. That there's things that they can do and to keep themselves safe and to learn more about our traditional medicines, the medicines that are out there, and when they come into peak, to pick and prepare and have some medicine tea.
Okay, thank you so much again, and thank you everybody. We're almost out of time, so Chimigwich, thank you, Neawa, everybody. There are many points on the chat saying thank you for just expressing gratitude for sharing your wisdom today. Hopefully this will be part of, or the beginning of, or a continuation of a conversation that we can have again in the future. I'm going to hand this over now to Angela Elzinga Chang, who's going to wrap things up. So thank you again, everybody, for participating.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Angela Elzinga Chang, and I work with Greenest City. And I have gratitude. Thank you, Rebecca, for moderating for us. And thank you to Rick, Eva, and Donna for all of the incredible, profound wisdom, stories, history, and present ways and ideas of ways for us to move forward together. It has certainly offered both a real reality of where things are not and a way for us to move forward with hope. So thank you so much for providing that for us. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about where things are going to go from here. So people are going to be able to get these resources. You could see that in the chat, but for those of you who are not on chat, you'll be able to find a recording of this, all the resources, amazing resources that were listed on there, many of them which included our speakers here today. You'll find those on Toronto Urban Growers and Greenest City's website when they're all ready. Then we are looking for ideas of what this could look like, a recommitment or a gathering together again of building relationships with each other to move forward to collectively together. So we're looking for ideas, and you can send that to rhonda@torontourbangrowers.org. And finally, Toronto Urban Growers is spearheading watch parties on further Indigenous learning, and where we will have a speaker, an Indigenous elder, a speaker who will be part of that as a panelist and a watch party together. So look for that information when on Toronto Urban Growers and Greenest City's website as well. So thank you so much for all the participants, for being present with your listening and learning hearts. And thank you again to our speakers. Have a really great day. And speakers, if you could just stay on, we're going to do our debriefing. So Donna, Rick, and Eva, and Rebecca, and Lorraine, and Rhonda, and Emma, if everyone could just stay, if those people could stay on. And all of the other participants, this would be a great time to sign off and have a good day. So Rick, Eva, Rebecca, we're just waiting for everyone to sign off.
Mm-hmm.
We're almost there. We're still at 31 people.
This is where we find out how many people walked away from their computers and work. Listening from a distance.
I think as a host, you can put people into a waiting room. I'm pretty
Yes,
sure we
that's
can do
right.
that.
Oh yeah, Emma, do you think you can do that?
Emma
From,
told us about that.
Yeah, I'll be able to start putting people into waiting room.
Oh, thank you.
I'll start at the same time.
Oh, can we can
Yeah, I'm
all do
putting.
that?
Yeah, I'm putting. Oops, I didn't mean to. Rebecca, how'd you get in the waiting room?
If we're all doing it at the same time, we may be moving the audience around. I was trying to find a non-violent way to express, like, how do we kick everybody out?
Yeah.
But move to the waiting room. That's nice.
Right.
And
Are you still
5-1
here, Rick? Is Rick still here?
oh, I don't see him.
Oh.
I'm readmitting him. Hopefully he'll join,
Okay.
unless he signed off himself.
Something.
And I'm unmuting Donna. I think we
Oh,
were.
there
You
you
also
go.
may want
Okay,
to.
Rick, you're
You
back.
also may want to stop. Sorry, I just want to say you may also want to stop the recording.
Oh.
Oh
good.
yeah.
We don't need to record
Good catch.
It's the whole
Good
idea.
catch.